Greatest in strength and deeds of prowess is Tulkus, who is surnamed Astaldo the Valiant. He came last to Arda to aid the Valar in the first battles with Melkor. He delights in wrestling and in contests of strength, and he rides no steed, for he can outrun all things that go on feet, and he is tireless. His hair and beard are golden, and his flesh ruddy. His weapons are his hands. He has little heed for either the past or the future, and is of no avail as a counselor, but as a hardy friend. His spouse is Nessa, the sister of Orome, and she also is lithe and fleet-footed. Deer she loves, and they follow her train whenever she goes in the wild, but she can outrun them, swift as an arrow, with the wind in her hair. In dancing she delights, and she dances in Valimar on lawns of never-fading green. Today we're going to learn all about Tulkus, and Tulkus is really the part of Eru that is all about bringing forth the balance with anger, with confidence, and Tulkus actually means in Quenya steady and firm. This valor we're going to learn more about in the beginning of days. Here it is said, "It is told among the wise that the first war began before Arda was full-shaped, and ere yet there was anything that grew or walked upon earth, and for long Melkor had the upper hand. But in the midst of the war, a spirit of great strength and hardihood came to the aid of the Valar, hearing in the far heaven that there was battle in the little kingdom, and Arda was filled with the sound of his laughter. So came Tulkus the strong, whose anger passes like a mighty wind, scattering clouds and darkness before it, and Melkor fled before his wrath and his laughter, and forsook Arda, and there was peace for a long age, and Tulkus remained and became one of the Valar of the kingdom of Arda. But Melkor brooded in the outer darkness, and his hate was given to Tulkus forever after." So there we learn that Tulkus was kind of a new spirit, a new energy. It came to balance out the discord and the injustice of Melkor. And Tulkus represents justice, seeking for the justice, seeking for the balance. Something that I have learned with focusing on Tulkus during these days, preparing for this movie, is the idea that Tulkus really helps you to understand your anger is not coming from a place that's wrong. It's not negative energy. It is truth that you must look at and must deal with. Tulkus' anger in general is focused on Melkor, rightly so. And so anger within us is a sign that something is not equal to you, that there's injustice in the world, that you observe injustice done to you and to others. Anger can be actually very good to have in the world, but it is how we deal with anger that determines our path of wisdom or not, because there are consequences with the different ways that you release anger. And so we'll learn more about Tulkus here. The next time we learn about Tulkus is in of the coming of the elves in the Silmarillion. "It came to pass that the Valar held council, for they became troubled by the tidings that Yavanna and Orome brought from the outer lands. And Yavanna spoke before the Valar, saying, 'Ye mighty of Arda, the vision of Iluvatar was brief and soon taken away, so that maybe we cannot guess within a narrow count of days the honor or the hour appointed. Yet be sure of this, the hour approaches, And within this age our hope shall be revealed, and the children shall awake. Shall we then leave the lands of their dwelling, desolate and full of evil? Shall they walk in darkness while we have light? Shall they call Melkor Lord, while Manwë sits upon Taniquetel? And Tulkus cried, Nay, let us make war swiftly. Have we not rested from strife over long? And is not our strength now renewed? Shall one alone contest with us forever? And here we see Tulkus is an important part of the Valar now, as he came as a new energy to Arda, to Earth. And he's not one to give counsel, as it said in the beginning. Tolkien did not make him be the one that did all the thinking and the deep analyzing. He lived in the present moment, and he spoke what was on his mind. And he is truth that comes through in a fiery passion. So Tolkien made Tulkus be the representative of Tolkien's anger also through when he saw the war, when he had to be part of the war in the Battle of Soma. And so this is the representation of all of our anger that can be well placed. This is a way that we can turn our anger into a positive energy and refocus. And that's what's wonderful about the Valar and their powers, is that if they were not positive or good to have, they wouldn't be Valar in the first place. And this is what we can learn from Tulkus when we think about the way that he behaves and we focus on him. Now, here's an interesting difference between Aule and Tulkus. Orome tarried a while among the Quendi, and then swiftly he rode back over land and sea to Valinor, and brought the tidings to Valmar. And he spoke of the shadows that troubled Covinian. Then the Valar rejoiced, and yet they were in doubt amid their joy, and they debated long what counsel it were best to take for the guarding of the Quendi from the shadow of Melkor. But Orome returned at once to Middle-earth, and abode with the elves. And this is when the elves awoke at the lake of Covinian. Manwë sat long and thought upon Taniquetel, and he sought the counsel of Ilúvatar, and coming then down to Valmar, he summoned the Valar to the ring of doom, and thither came even Olmo from the outer sea. Then Manwë said to the Valar, This is the counsel of Ilúvatar in my heart, that we should take up again the mastery of Arda, at whatsoever cost, and deliver the Quendi from the shadow of Melkor. Then Tulkus was glad, but Aule was grieved, foreboding the hurts of the world that must come of that strife. So Tulkus is always ready for a fight. He's always ready for the battle, and he is not thinking about the future consequences. He lives in the present moment. And that is okay. It is a form of expression. And if we can find a combination of Aule and Tulkus, then we can find that path of wisdom within our anger, understanding that there are consequences to the way that we express and release our anger. And here we see more about how Tulkus acts. But at the last gates of Utumno were broken, and the howls unroofed, and Melkor took refuge in the outermost pit. Then Tulkus stood forth as champion of the Valar, and wrestled with Melkor, and cast him upon his face, and he was bound with the chain Agnor that Aule had wrought, and led captive, and the world had peace for a long age. So Tulkus is always the one to kind of defeat Melkor. He was the mightiest in strength, in brute strength, natural strength. He used no weapons. You can liken him to Hercules, to just natural strength with no armor, no weapons, and we'll get into more of the description of what he looks like. And he was always the one to wrestle with Melkor, to wrestle with the injustice, and he always kept that anger and that burning anger and almost a hatred for Melkor in a way that helped to keep the balance. When Melkor needed to be caught, Tulkus was the one that would run after and wrestle him. And then here it is where we get to another place here. So this is when finally, after that long age, Melkor then is released back into Manwë's judgment. And this is this part, and we see what Tulkus feels about this. Then Manwë granted him pardon, Melkor pardon, but the Valar would not yet suffer him to depart beyond their sight and vigilance, and he was constrained to dwell within the gates of Valmor. But fair-seeming were all the words and deeds of Melkor in that time, and both the Valar and the Eldar have profit from his aid and counsel, if they sought it, and therefore in a while he was given leave to go freely about the land. And it seemed to Manwë that the evil of Melkor was cured, for Manwë was free from evil, and could not comprehend it. And he knew that in the beginning, in the thought of Iluvatar, Melkor had been even as he, and he saw not to the depths of Melkor's heart, and did not perceive that all love had departed from him forever. But Ulmo was not deceived, and Tulkus clenched his hands whenever he saw Melkor, his foe, go by. For Tulkus is slow to wrath, he is slow also to forget. But they obeyed the judgment of Manwë, for those who will defend authority against rebellion must not themselves rebel. Now, this is a wisdom coming from Tolkien, the idea of if you're somebody that is always upset about the injustice and the unfairness that you see, and that if there is fair authority, then you must not be an anarchist or a rebel, because you need to be an example of that fairness in the heart. If you really want to be a warrior for injustice and bring forth justice. And that's why he respected Manwë. He did not go above Manwë. Tulkus is, like I said, a positive example of anger. The idea that you can have a fire burning within you, but you don't overstep your boundaries, and it's not directed to others in an inappropriate way. He only directed his anger towards Melkor. So I'll keep going. In the Silmarillion, this is of the Silmarils. Now, this is when the deeds of Feanor get to the Valar, and the Valar then call Feanor in to be judged, and this is this part here. Now, the unrest of the Noldor was not indeed hidden from the Valar, but its seed had been sown in the dark, and therefore, since Feanor first spoke openly against them, they judged that he was the mover of discontent, being eminent in self-will and arrogance, though all the Noldor had become proud. And Manwë was grieved, but he watched and said no word. The Valar had brought the Eldar to their land freely to dwell or to depart, and though they might judge departure to be folly, they might not restrain them from it. But now the deeds of Feanor could not be passed over, and the Valar were angered and dismayed, and he was summoned to appear before them at the gates of Valmar to answer for all his words and deeds. And this is really in the kinslaying of the Teleri elves. There also were summoned all others who had any part in this matter or any knowledge of it, and Feanor, standing before Mondos in the Ring of Doom, was commanded to answer all that was asked of him. Then at last the root was laid bare, and the malice of Melkor revealed, and straightway Tulkus left the council to lay hands upon him and bring him again to judgment. But Feanor was not held guiltless, for he it was that had broken the peace of Valinor and drawn his sword upon his kinsman. So Tulkus is always the one to go after Melkor. None of the other Valar did. I mean, they would be sad, they would mourn the darkness that Melkor brought, but Tulkus was the one that fought physically against Melkor. And Manwë did have his moments because he would make the earth tremble and the wind come with his anger. But it was Tulkus that would actually physically represent, almost like a titan, wrestling like as a giant, wrestling this dark spirit and dark energy of Melkor. And then here we have another part here where you see also more of the thoughts of Tulkus. Now, Melkor, knowing that his devices had been revealed, hid himself and passed from place to place as a cloud in the hills. Melkor was a coward. He was always running away from the Valar. He was hiding in, different places. And Tulkus, as having no horse, was the one who would run after him, would look for him, would always be looking for that battle and for that war. And so here is where he says, and Tulkus sought for him in vain. Then it seemed to the people of Valinor that the light of the trees were dimmed, and the shadows of all standing things grew longer and darker in that time. So in the Silmarillion, Tulkus is always the one that physically represents going after Melkor. And Orome too, a little bit on his horse, but it's always Tulkus that does it without a horse. He just runs from place to place all over Valinor, searching for Melkor or where he's hiding. And then here we have, this is I think an interesting place where we see that Tulkus is not always able to achieve his goal, and that because it's part of the theme for the darkness to win in the beginning, temporarily so, then we see this battle take place here. So the great darkness fell upon Valinor. Of the deeds of that day much is told, anon Lindale. And the Vanyar made, and is known to all the Eldar, yet no song or tale could contain all the grief and terror that then befell. The light failed, but the darkness that followed was more than loss of light. In that hour was made a darkness that seemed not lack, but a thing with being of its own, for it was indeed made by malice out of light. And it had power to pierce the eye, and to enter heart and mind, and strangle the very will. Varda looked down from Taniquetil, but Manwë from his high seat looked out, and his eyes alone pierced through the night, until they saw a darkness beyond dark, which they could not penetrate, huge but far away, moving now northward with great speed, and he knew that Melkor had gone and come. Then the pursuit was begun, and the earth shook beneath the horses of the host of Orome, and the fire that was stricken from the hooves of Nahar was the first light that returned to Valinor. But so soon as any came up with the cloud of Ungoliant, the riders of the Valar were blinded and dismayed. And Ungoliant is a spider form of dark energy that just devoured the light of Valinor, that was conjured by Melkor. It was an evoked spirit by Melkor. And this is an example of magic being used for evil, and this is the type of sorcery that Tolkien was against. The riders of the Valar were blinded and dismayed, and they were scattered, and went they knew not whither, and the sound of the Valroma faltered and failed. And Tulkus was as one caught in a black net at night, and he stood powerless and beat the air in vain. But when the darkness had passed, it was too late. Melkor had gone whither he would, and his vengeance was achieved. And then this is where we see more of Tulkas after that event of Melkor. After, an age of that, this is what happens here. So Yavanna, this is of the flight of the Noldor. Yavanna spoke before the Valar, saying, "The light of the trees has passed away, and lives now only in the Silmarils of Feanor, because the light of the two trees were basically devoured by this giant dark energy named Ungoliant. Foresighted was he. Even for those who are mightiest under Iluvatar, there is some work that they may accomplish once and once only. The light of the trees I brought into being, and within Ea, I can do so never again. Yet had I but a little of that light, I could recall life to the trees, ere their roots decay, and then our heart should be healed, and the malice of Melkor be confounded." Then Manwë spoke and said, "Hearest thou, Feanor, son of Finwë, the words of Yavanna? Wilt thou grant what she would ask?" And there was long silence, but Feanor answered no word. Then Tulkas cried, "Speak, O Noldo, yea or nay, but who shall deny Yavanna? And did not the light of the Silmarils come from her work in the beginning?" But Aule, the Valar, said, "Be not hasty. We ask a greater thing than thou knowest. Let him have peace yet a while." Because Aule really loved the Noldor. He was more closer to them because of their ability to craft, and they represented a lot of his domain of craftsmanship and creation in that way. And so Tulkas is just impatient with that Feanor, and he's the one, like the interrogator, like he wants answers. He wants justice to be, to be sought for. So he is not patient with Feanor at that point. And there we see here, this is Feanor's speech. Now this is where we hear about Tulkas, and this is where he says, long he spoke, and ever he urged the Noldor to follow him, and by their own prowess to win freedom and great realms in the lands of the east, before it was too late. For he echoed the lies of Melkor, that the Valar had cozened them and would hold them captive so that men might rule in Middle-earth. Many of the Eldar heard then for the first time of the aftercomers. "Fair shall the end be," he cried, "though long and hard shall be the road. Say farewell to bondage, but say farewell also to ease. Say farewell to the weak. Say farewell to your treasures. More still shall we make. Journey light, but bring with you your swords, for we will go further than Oromade and endure longer than Tulkas. We will never turn back from pursuit after Morgoth to the ends of the earth." Okay, and then so this is where you see this very interesting thing. This is why Feanor represents pride, and this is the cooperation that the Valar wanted to have with the Eldar. But Feanor represents in saying, we will go further than Orome, and we will endure longer than Tulkas, meaning we will be better. We will surpass their levels. And so this is the arrogance and the pride of Feanor, and where they fall is not the cooperation, which is sometimes where the fire of anger can get you into trouble, because it pushes more of a distance between each other rather than bringing in the spirit of cooperation that can get more done, really. But Tulkas represents that one that is always going after Melkor. Now, in the Book of Lost Tales, you get a little bit more information, which I wanted to read here. So this is about more of the coming of the Valar, and in the beginning, what this was about. So here it is. Then all the Valar were angered with Melkor, and Makar alone spoke against Manwë. But the rest chose certain of their numbers to seek out the wrongdoer, and these were Mandos and Tulkas. Mandos, for that of his dread aspect was Melkor, more in fear than of aught else, save it were the strength of Tulkas' arm, and Tulkas was the other. And Makar and his fierce sister Miessa were other types of Valar. There are other types of energy or spirits that came to Arda kind of along with Tulkas. And what Tolkien says, or in the Lost Tales in his notes, that did not get part of Silmarillion, but it was in the mind of Tolkien, is that these two spirits would have been better not to come to Arda because they make things worse. Not Tulkas. Tulkas was a spirit that should come to Arda. His laughter filled the air. When he came in, it was this confident laughter that cleared all the shadows and made Melkor, slink away into his hiding places. The confidence of Tulkas and what he represents of being correctly directed anger, in the idea of it was accurate. It was towards Melkor and nobody else. And that was the spirit of Tulkas. But the spirit of Makar and Miesse, Tolkien says in his notes that it would have been better if they did not come. However, they dwell with Tulkas in his house, and we'll learn more about that here. So it says, and these were Mandos and Tulkas. So these were the rest, certain of their number, to seek out the wrongdoer. They were Mandos and Tulkas, and Mandos, for that of his dread aspect was Melkor, more in fear than of aught else, save it were the strength of Tulkas' arm, and Tulkas was the other. And so those two, the Mandos guarded the Hall of Mandos, and he was actually Namo, and he was like the Valar of death, basically. And so Melkor had a fear of him, more so than Tulkas's strength and arm, meaning that Melkor did have some fear within his spirit, that his spirit could be lost, that he could be chained in the halls of Mandos forever. So those were the two that were angered by Melkor, in the idea of being the most angry, and also representing the justice of getting back at Melkor and balancing back what Melkor has taken out of Arda. And here we learn more about Tulkas here. Otherwise was the mind of Tulkas, and he dwelt amidmost of Valimar. But youthful is he, and strong of limb, and lusty, and for that he is named Poldore, who loveth games, and twanging of bows, and boxing, and wrestling, and running, and leaping, and songs that go with a swing, and a toss of a well-filled cup. Nonetheless, he is no wrangler or striker of blows unprovoked, as is Makar. Albeit there are none of Valar or Uvanamar, who are monsters, giants, and orcs, that do not fear the sinews of Tulkas' arm and the buffet of his ironclad fist when he has cause for wrath. His was a house of mirth and revelry, and it sprang high into the air with many stories, and had a tower of bronze and pillars of copper in a wide arcade. In its court men played and reviled one another in doughty feats, and there at times would that fair maiden, Nessa, wife of Tulkas, bear goblets of the goodliest wine and cooling drinks among the players. So there we see his house and what it's about. His domain is sports and recreation of physical fitness and exercise, but at the same time, he is also the one to go to battle and to be the first to fight. So there is that representation within Tulkus. And within the Silmarillion, there is a story of his wedding with Nessa, and that the Valar celebrated his wedding because he was the youngest Valar, that he came and he married Nessa. And so there was this great feast. And after the feasting, you just picture his spirit, like in the idea of he was done after the wedding, content and so happy, filled with laughter and joy, and then fell asleep. He ate and fell asleep. He almost reminds me of the spirit of the hobbits, if you think about it. The eating, the drinking, the playing around. There is this cheeriness of Tulkus. And so it is a nice complexity of a character that he created. He's not just all warlike. He's not just the warrior against Morgoth. He also is the bringer of laughter, of cheerfulness, and lightheartedness. And in some way, because Tulkus means steady and firm, then it means that steady and firm, to be truly steady and firm, is to have a nice balance of both laughter and anger within you, but rightly directed anger. Because, as he said, nobody else would ever receive the blows of Melkor, or the blows of Tulkus, except for Melkor. Tulkus would never lay a hand on anyone else unless they were a servant of Melkor and part of that whole discord and causing problems. And then here we learn what Tulkus wears and what he looks like, so you can get a visualization, and this helps you kind of bring in and harness that energy. So, but Orome rode alone upon a chestnut horse and had a spear, and Tulkus strode mightily beside his stirrup, having a tunic of hide and a brazen belt, and no weapon save a gauntlet upon his right hand, iron bound. So he really had no weapon. He just had a glove of iron on his right hand, and that's it. And he had this hide, like a tunic, strapped across his side, like a Hercules character, basically, or caveman. Just very, very simple. And it just means that he had the brute strength. Whereas Orome was the one that was, dressed up in the warrior gear and had a spear and rode his horse. So there is a difference there that you see. And then this is an interesting part here where this is where you start to see what Tulkus is about here too. That now Aule mightily backed her in this, and after him many else of the gods, yet Mondos and Lorien held their peace. So this is actually, where should I start here? This is where Vana, okay, here. Now is the court set upon the slopes of Taniquetel, and Melkor arranged before all the valley, great and small, lying bound before the silver chair of Manwe. Against him speaketh Ose and Orome and Ulumo in deep air, and Vana in abhorrence, proclaiming his deeds of cruelty and violence. Yet Makar still spoke for him, although not warmly, for said he, "'Twere an ill thing if peace were for always. Already no blow echoes ever in the eternal quietude of Valinor. Wherefore, if one might neither see deed of battle nor righteous joy, even in the world without, then 'twould be irksome indeed, and I for one long not for such times." So here's an interesting thing where we see Makar being one of the Valar that kind of, he's an energy that's not part of the major 14, but he ends up going alongside with Melkor because he represents anger that's misplaced and that is just about war and wants to just fight anyone. And there's an injustice part of that because he'll even go after the innocent. And so he follows Melkor, and then he becomes the voice for Melkor, saying that all this joy would be irksome, annoying. And I, for one, long for not such times. He doesn't want the eternal quiet of Valinor. He doesn't want the peace. And so he is the voice of Melkor saying, I don't want the peace and the happiness and the joy. This is annoying to me. And then this is why there is that discord, and wanting to start things. And so Makar is represented in that, in the notes. And he's not really part of the major story, but we get an understanding more of what Melkor is feeling at this time through his words. And then Tulkus, now Aule mightily backed her in this, because Vana then says, well, take heed, O Valar, that both elves and men be not devoid of all solace when so the times come for them to find the earth. But Melkor writhed in rage, and at the name of the Eldar and of men, and at his own impotence. And now Aule mightily backed her in this, and after many else of the gods, yet Mandos and Lorien held their peace, nor did they ever speak much at the councils of the Valar, or indeed at other times. But Tulkus arose angrily from the midst of the assembly, and went from among them, for he could not endure parleying where he thought the guilt to be clear. Tulkus could not stand being in the presence of Melkor. He could not stand letting Melkor get away with it. He was that representation of that angry energy that does not deal with injustice, does not deal with the intolerance of Melkor or the inability to be in cooperation and live in harmony with the other Valar. Tulkus would just not have it. So he got up and he walked away, and he fumed, on his own. And this is why he constantly is always angry at Melkor. The theft of Melkor and the darkening of Valar. So now we see in the tale of Eoriol, now came Eoriol home to the cottage of lost play, and his love for all the things that he saw about him, and his desire to understand them all became more deep. Continually did he thirst to know yet more of the history of the Eldar, yet nor did he ever fail to be among those who fared each evening to the room of the tell fire. And so on a time when he had already sojourned some while as a guest of Vaere and Lindo, it so passed that Lindo at his entreaty spoke thus from his deep chair. And Vaere and Lindo, they are so this is not the Valar Vaere. This is actually a wife of Lindo, and she's an elf in Valinor. So now we're getting a tale that is being told, that's passed down, and Tulkus is part of it. Listen then, O Eoriol, if thou willst know how it so came that the loveliness of Valinor was abated, or the elves might ever be constrained to leave the shores of Eldamar, it may well be that you know already that Melkor dwelt in Valmor as a servant in the house of Tulkus in those days of the joy of Eldale. There did he nurse his hatred of the gods and his consuming jealousy of the Eldar, but it was his lust for the beauty of the gems, for all his feigned indifference, that in the end overbore his patience and caused him to design deep and evilly. So here we see the tale of when Melkor finally was brought to justice for a little while, and he actually had to be a servant in Tulkus's house. That was his punishment that Manwe came up with. So Melkor had to be a servant of Tulkus, and that definitely can provide a lot of tension there. So here's where Tulkus is speaking, and we see him here. Then Manwe bid him unhand and herald, But the gods arose crying with one voice. So what happened was Melkor eventually escaped from Tulkus's grasp or his house, and he caused more damage on Middle Earth or in Valinor. And so Tulkus was able to seize Melkor, grab him, bring him back to Manwë. And then this is when Manwë bid him unhand Melkor, the herald. But the gods arose crying with one voice, "This is no herald, but a rebel, a thief, and a murderer. He hath defiled the sanctity of Valinor," shouted Tulkus. So this is where he's like, we should not treat this man, fairly at this point, or we should not treat Melkor fairly at this point. "He hath defiled the sanctity of Valinor," shouted Tulkus, "and cast his insolence in our teeth." Now the mind of all the elves was as one in this matter. Hope they had none of the recovery of the jewels, save by the capture of Melkor, which was now a matter beyond hope, but they would have no parley with Melkor whatsoever, and would treat him as an outlaw and all his folk. And this was the meaning of Manwë, saying that the death of Bruthware would be the root of the greatest evil, for it was that slaying that most inflamed both gods and elves. So there we see in these notes that Tulkus is the one to constantly wrestle Melkor, bring him back, and then just be upset with the decision to be gentle with him, to provide that balance. Because you have to think, as cruel as Melkor is, then you have to have that opposite energy that can defeat Melkor and bring back that balance, but it's more justified, and that energy is positive in that it's only directed back towards Melkor, and it doesn't destroy anything outside of Melkor. It just destroys Melkor, himself, in terms of always fighting with Melkor and wrestling him. Tulkus' power is described here, and then we start to see a son of Tulkus that is represented in Orion's constellation. Tulkus is the van of the great hunt, so they're looking for Melkor, leaping sure-footed in the dimness, and Orome may not keep up with him, for even his divine steed cannot rush as headlong in the gathering night as does Poldore and Ossi. His head above the shadowy seas, and seeing no longer any light come down the valley of Kor, he leaps upon the beach of Eldamar and runs in haste to join the Anor in their hunt. Now is the only light place left in Valinor, that garden where the golden fountain sprang from Carnelian, and there were Vana and Nessa and Uruin and many maids and ladies of the Valar in tears. But Lorien, who's another name for Yavanna, grids her lord as he stands impatiently, and Varda has ridden forth from Taniquetil by her lord's side, bearing a blazing star before him as a torch. Telemachtar, this is the son of Tulkus, is with those noble ones, and his face and weapons gleam as silver in the dark. But now all the gods and all their folk ride this way and that, and some have torches in their hands, so that the plain is full of pale, wandering lights, and the sound of voices hollowing in the dusk. So now we see and understand Telemachtar. We're introduced with him. And in the notes, Telemachtar is Orion, which is symbolizing a warrior to defeat Melkor indefinitely one day with the sickle of Varda, the Big Dipper, and Sirius is known as the blue bee that buzzes around, gives the honey to Telemachtar. So he connects the constellations with this story. And I mean, that's something that is really ingrained in mankind with these constellations that we know as well. So it's a beautiful story of the idea of the darkness being here for a little while, and then the light triumphing over that darkness. Now, here is two last things about Tulkus. Now, this is when Yavanna speaks again, and this is after the two trees have died, and this is in his notes. Now, therefore, they called for Yavanna, and she came and asked them what they would. And hearing, she wept and spoke before them, saying, Know ye, O Valar, and ye sons and daughters of the Eldar, children of Iluvatar, first offspring of the forest of the earth, that never may these two trees bloom again, and others like them may not be brought to life for many, many ages of the world. Many things shall be done and come to pass, and the gods grow old, and the elves come nigh to fading, ere ye shall see the rekindling of these trees, or the magic sun relit. And the gods knew not what she meant, speaking of the magic sun, nor did for a long while after. But Tulkus, hearing, said, Why speakest thou these words, O Cemitari? For foretelling is not they want, and that of evil least of all. So Tulkus, because of his laughter inside, because of his cheerful nature, as well as being a warrior, he is the one also to first try to put out the sadness in others and saying, well, don't think that way, Cemitari. Don't think that the trees will never bloom again. Why are you thinking that way? But that's because he's living in the moment and he's speaking from his heart. There is another part that when Vayanna, when she starts to cry, she brings forth the golden tree, Laurelene, once again. And so this is when Tulkus is ready to be a cheerleader in this. So then sped Vanna a little way out upon the plain, and she lifted up her sweet voice with all her power, and it came trembling faintly to the gates of Almar, and all the Valar heard. Then said Omar, "'Tis the voice of Vanna's lamentation." But Salmar said, "Nay, listen more, for rather is there joy in that sound." And all that stood be hearkened, and the words they heard where light hath returned. So this is because Vanna's tears actually made this tree grow again. It budded. It said that it budded and the buds were all gold, and there came light therefrom like a ray of sunlight beneath a cloud. It was her tears, very much like Niana's tears, but it was tears of youth, tears of rebirth, because Vayanna symbolizes Thule, spring. So that was represented within her power there. And loud then was the murmur about the streets of Valmar, that the tree rebloomed again, and folk sped thronging over the plain. And when they beheld Vanna beneath the tree, and the new shoot of gold, then suddenly did a song of very mighty praise, and joy burst forth on every tongue. And Tulkus said, Lo, mightier have the spells of Yavanna proved than her foretelling. But Yavanna, gazing upon Vayanna's face, said, Alas, 'tis not so, for in this have my spells played but a lesser part, and more potent has the gentle love of Vanna been, and her falling tears a dew more healing and more tender than all the radiance of old. Yet as for my foretelling, soon wilt thou see, O Tulkus, if thou dost but watch. So Tulkus is one that does not have the wisdom to foretell the future, but he lives in the moment and he is expressing himself continuously, and he's part of Eru's mind, because the Valar came from Eru as a part of the energy, and it represents a part of us, because that is really the larger message about this. Because the Silmarillion is a reflection of us, and it's not, as all things are reflections, and it's not just a reflection of Eru alone, but we are parts of Eru in the idea of creation itself. And the gods are not the creation itself, but they are those that watch over particular parts of creation, but they are not life itself or creation itself. Eru is in the meaning of the Silmarillion. And so it's about getting in touch with our certain aspects of ourselves. Again, I would say that Tulkus has really helped me in focusing on that energy this month. I think that there are times when we feel rage and anger in us, and it can be something that's sometimes uncontrollable, and it's not focused, and it's not something that can easily be soothed, because we're not really sure of where it comes from. We just feel angry sometimes and we don't know why. And we're angry at the world, we're angry at others, we're angry at ourselves. And Tulkus kind of represents more guided anger. And this really helps because it's more about looking at the source of your anger. That's part of the story, part of the unfoldment of your truth, of what you are supposed to express. And so I think that he's such an important energy that came to Arda and that is on Earth when we look at ourselves. Because I will be completely honest, one of the things that causes, murder and killing and destruction is unfocused anger, angry at others, and you just want to get rid of them, and there's no sense of compromise, and there's no sense of cooperation. And so Tulkus helps us really kind of put it in place that the only types of angers that we should truly have in terms of wanting to destroy is darkness itself. And what is darkness? It is unawareness within ourselves. So it is about focusing that energy, bringing that darkness to justice, facing ourselves, facing those demons within and bringing that to light. And that is the Great Balancer and Equalizer that Tulkus represents. So he represents many different energies: confidence in the self, anger, fiery anger, but in a positive way that's directed in the right way towards equality and bringing forth balance again. Strength, he represents natural strength without weapons, except for only that iron made fist that he had. And this is an important aspect because sometimes we try to fight all our wars with weapons, and technology is trying to develop the greater weapon. And so this is the truth. It's about natural strength rather than developing all these weapons to hurt each other. If you don't have the natural strength, then you shouldn't be fighting in the first place. It's kind of like the message here. Action without thought. So many of the Valar represent thought without action, in the idea of Mandos or Ermo, how he just kind of thinks and he doesn't say anything, but he keeps it inside and he reflects on it. And also Ulmo, he thinks without sometimes saying things, and he broods in his ocean in the deep outer seas. But Tulkus is the opposite, the direct opposite. He acts without thinking, without thought. So it is that nice balancer that we need at times. Sometimes in our life, we just need to act and stop over-analyzing everything. He also represents physical exercise and sports, and in play and in idea of battle, keeping yourself physically fit so that you can fight your battles, but at the same time, keeping yourself physically fit for the joy of it, to wrestle around with others, to play sports with others. A friendly type of competition is what sports can offer, but you can go the other way where competition becomes something that's kind of negative, but it's about where you go with it and how far you go. And if you keep the spirit of joy and laughter in you when you're playing sports and competing against each other, then you won't have problems. You won't want to kill each other in the name of sports. And then he represents, just the general yang energy, making things happen, getting things done. This is the month of Aries, the seed planter, the pioneers. So this is about getting things done, doing what you have said you have wanted to do and moving through it. So Tulkus and Quenya means steady and firm. So we can be more Tulkus ourselves when we put our focus to be. And what makes us really steady and firm is understanding our core and ways to work with and understand this energy. So these are the ways that can help us understand our core and understand Tulkus more better within ourselves and what he represents. Number 1, anger of Tulkus is about reaching for a resolve, a resolution with self-expression of your disappointment, of your frustration in life, of your dislikes or annoyances, and feeling deeply an injustice done to you or to others in the world. And anger helps to set our own personal boundaries with feeling like you're being taken advantage of by others. And what this does is this provides a mirror for those that are taking advantage of you, and it teaches them, and they learn and grow in their spiritual development. Your anger is not only helpful and beneficial to you, it's also helpful and beneficial for others if you express it in a way that's not a fist to the face, but in a way that you say, I'm angry. I'm really angry right now with you, and this is why. So I wrote this, that it's not a negative energy. When I think about anger, it's not a negative energy that takes away. It's not destruction. It's fire. It's passion. It's spirit inside. And it can lead to destruction if it's misused and it's misdirected and it's not successful in what it's trying to achieve. So Tolkien would not make a Valar that was negative. All his Valar represented powers, positive powers of Middle Earth, of Arda, and within all beings of Middle Earth, that these are positive powers that we can get in touch with. Only the negative power was Melkor, but it was needed to know the positive powers. And so I said this, Tolkien would not make Tulkus of Valar with this power. It's his power that allows him to wrestle Morgoth. So it's not negative, because if Tolkien thought that this power was negative, he wouldn't made him a Valar in the first place. And he wouldn't have become a new, energy that was born on Middle Earth to defeat Morgoth quite a couple times. Number 2, Tulkus is angry at no one else except those who caused destruction of Valinor. So Melkor and Makar and any of those that align to Melkor, Tulkus then has his wrath towards. This is the universe angry at the discord, in the idea of it's kind of like the divine will of creation speaking out against when other souls go too far in discord and destruction. It is about rebalancing that and pulling back so that nothing ever is destroyed forever and that life can move forwards. So it's a very important energy, and that if you are honest with yourself of where your anger comes from, if you are fully communicative with those that make you angry, then you can reach a sense of resolve within you. Tulkus can teach us that our anger is justified when we see harmful injustice and destruction. It is a time for change, and fire brings forwards change as it burns away within us and destroys kind of some of the older feelings within us. There is a great sadness that can happen when someone represses their anger too long, because that's old feelings that you have dealt with and repressed from your old events. And the fire is the catalyst, and that is your anger. So as soon as you're feeling angry, just feel that. Allow yourself to feel angry. You had those events, you've had those experiences, those injustices done to you. So allow that anger to burn through you. It's not a fun energy to feel. You can actually feel it inside you. It feels like hot fire. You tremble, you get fiery, you feel it in your body. And it's about learning how to allow that anger to not explode out of you and destroy everything around you, but learning how to let it be a steady flame, a firm flame that lets people know that you're serious, that you have somehow crossed boundaries that are not okay with you. And that's the steady, firm, angry flame that Tulkus represents. And that's something that we can channel if we feel that we're taken advantage of in life, if we feel that maybe we need to express our anger a little bit more because we feel so angry inside and we don't know why we feel so much rage. It's about being honest with ourselves and allowing that fire to burn steadily. And what happens is when that fire burns really steady and you just are communicating that in a way that brings forth resolve, then it will eventually go out. You'll soothe those flames, and instead it won't be this like forced fire that just runs and rages and just destroys everything in its path of destruction. You can let it be a steady, firm flame. And anger really is just letting us know that it's time for transformation. It's time for change within. It's alchemical that way, and that is the burning away of the old so you can bring in the new. And that energy brings change as it burns away the old, and that's your transformation. So it's a really important element, but you have to have it in balance with release and with rest and peace. Tulkus is balance of play and war. And this is where the rest and the peace come in. He's able to sit back, to enjoy, to laugh, and to play. But when it's time to come to battle, he's ready. And that's what he represents. He is a ready fighter of Melkor, but he is a lover and a friend of all innocent beings. He is a protector of the Eldar and of the Valar, and he's willing to lend a hand in any battle for sport or for sheer war. Tulkus is confident in himself, and he does not doubt because he does not overanalyze. Tolkien wrote purposefully that he was not a man of many thoughts, not one that would counsel, but that is also his gift. There's a power in that because he's not overanalyzing and self-doubting. He is more about action and doing, and he is not a thinker but a doer, and he represents the physical world more so than the mental. So it's about balance. There's a lot of Valar that represent the mental. I think Tolkien a lot of times was very mental, and so he was very mentally stimulated. And so the Valar are very mentally stimulated, but there's also a nice balance of the Valar. You're going to see there's a physical set of powers and there's a mental set of powers as well. And the mental is really spiritual, the energetic. If you are someone who constantly is unhappy and you think too much and you overanalyze, then the Tulkus energy is really great to get in touch with every once in a while. Focus on Tulkus, and that will remind you to achieve through action too. It's not just thought only, but it's also action in balance with thought. Especially good for spiritual and mentally stimulated people. Water and air signs can reach an internal power by this observing and the harnessing of his powers. So it's very good for especially the air and water signs, which tend to sometimes be mental or emotional. And the earth And fire signs are really good at being more physical and also expressive in that way, outwardly so. Number 5, Tulkus is the physical endurance and sportsmanship of Eru's mind of a sentient universe, a good reminder to stay active, to be successful in our own endeavors. We are beings that represent that need for the inner balance of the physical and the material. We ourselves have to be keeping ourselves healthy and strong by doing exercises, by keeping ourselves as fit as we can. There is a great connection between being unhappy and being unfit physically. And exercise helps those endorphins and really does help depression and feeling sad. And so if you are somebody that constantly feels like you're in a state of lethargy and sadness and depression, I know that it's sometimes very hard, but even just a walk around the block can get those endorphins running. Tolkien, I think, left that message for us within Tulkus that when you move a lot, you also laugh a lot too. So there is a nice balance of that with the physical of Tulkus. And it really is about, he represents the youth. You know, he's the youngest Valar. He represents youth. This is going to be the moon of youth, which we're going to celebrate in ritual for Tulkus. And the youthful your body stays when you are constantly moving around. I posted a great video of a 91-year-old gymnast that you can watch on YouTube. There's 440,000 likes on this video because people know that it reflects something inside, that that's the way the human body should be or could be as a potential, that you can move and be full of flexibility until you're 91. If you really put your mind to it like she did. It's about your focus and your drive. And I said this, that we are physical beings and we're designed to move, to play, and the more you do, the youthful your body stays, because muscle has memory. And once you remember to get back into shape, you will find your body wants to be in top physical form all the time. But it's the limit of the mind that can stop you from this practice. And so sedentary life is one that ages you more quickly. And as you are resting, which is very important, you also have to balance it with movement too. So you have to ask yourself that question, are you resting right now because you're being lazy? Are you having self-doubt in your own success and movement? And allow yourself to kind of push yourself to get out there and to exercise and to get that physical need that is important to help keep you youthful and strong, and to be able to fight your battles with a clear mind. And it really does increase self-confidence, because when you're confident in your body, you will be confident as well in yourself emotionally and mentally too. Tulkus needs no horse to run. He is the swiftest and the strongest. And the natural strength is about knowing your endurance levels and challenging yourself, being the best you can be as a warrior, and just knowing, knowing your limits, but also trying to push yourself past those limits too sometimes. So get into a sport that you can play, buy an exercise DVD. Right now, you might not be able to play sports, but because we have social distancing, but you can always do many different things at home on your own, just simple exercising and stretching, or run around your neighborhood, run outside, go for a brisk walk every now and then. Staying healthy and physical will help to harness the powers of Tulkus. Number 6, Tulkus will teach us self-confidence, which comes not at overindulging on thought, but putting your foot in front of the other and walking the path within your heart. finish through projects, creations, and each time you succeed or achieve a goal, your subconscious stores it in your memory as being able to do things when you say you will. And this is what builds self-confidence. It is something to build. It's not something that you just naturally have. It has taken me many years to get to this point. So that is what I would say, is that anybody who feels that they lack self-confidence, that they could never feel like Tulkus did, they can never laugh in the face of danger, they can never laugh at their shadows. It is about you giving yourself the time to do things that you say you will, building upon your achievements, and then being able to see, well, I can do anything I put my mind to. I have achieved that already, so I can achieve this too. And that is how you get rid of self-doubt and you build that confidence within you. And over time, this is what builds your confidence, because belief in yourself comes from trust and faith in you, that you are able to do something that you put your mind and body to. And I would say, number 7, Tulkus represents laughter as your warrior against your inner demons or darkness. You can laugh away your fears at times, like Tulkus, and those demons will run and scatter and hide. Laughter is strength. It comes from an authentic place of joy, an unworried state. So there's a difference between fake laughter, that your body will know that that's not real. It's about the energy that you put out. So, if you're feeling joyful and you are in a state of you're unworried, then let that be expressed, because the more that you do that, the more you will clear away the shadows in this world, not only with yourself, but with others too. Laughing in the face of danger or darkness is something that's really powerful, and that was a power that Tulkus had. As soon as he came into Arda, the laughter filled the air, and Melkor just kind of hid away, because laughter is light, and light pierces through that darkness, and it is authentic and truth. So that's also a power that he represents. You can only laugh in the face of darkness when you are confident about your own light. So it is about, if you're not at the place where you can laugh at some of the darkness in your life, or the darkness within yourself, or the dark thoughts, or the darkness in the world, then it's also a little bit about you getting to the point where you're confident in yourself, that you're confident in yourself and you have less self-doubt. And then that's when you can laugh. And, there's a point where if you just laugh all your problems away, then nothing gets done. But there's a balance there. And so it's about laughing and also getting things done. So you can get more confident with Tulkus and own your true power inside. And you can really feel that this month, especially with the observance of this moon in Libra, which is the scales of balance. And that is the full moon that is happening tomorrow. Crystals and tools that will help you, just if you want to provide yourself a space, if you really like the energy of Tulkus, if you need this more in your life, then here are some tools that can help you. Tiger Eye. Tiger Eye, for me, represents stability and security. I always really love the stone. I have it, and it's an orange kind of golden stone with gold threads through it, and it's just really pretty to look at. It looks like a cat's eye. And, Tulkus himself, he kind of is lion-like. He just seems like a lion in his warrior nature and the way he looks. Golden mane, Tolkien described him as, wearing nothing but a hide on him. So he's very much like a lion man. So grounding stone of strength and security, Tiger's Eye. You cannot help but feel the grounding and regal energies of the stone. Like a tiger or a lion, this stone has frequencies to help make you more aggressive and amplify your assertive nature of the solar plexus, which is your confidence, your self-esteem. to go after what you want. So Tiger's Eye is really helpful, and I think that it represents Tulkus very well. I would say a raw ruby, so Tulkus and Aule actually work together a lot. And I would say that the polished ruby was a lot like Aule, and the raw ruby is Tulkus. So you see that friendship there, and you see how similar they are, but they're also a little different. The raw ruby, a powerful gemstone, a fiery red that brings out passion and clarity of what you are most passionate about. It helps focus your intentions when you feel not steady in life. And if you have a polished ruby, that's great too. That red energy, that is the root chakra, that is the core, that's your stability, that is your passion. Red is the very first it's the first color of the light spectrum for a reason, because it represents that grounding, that passion, the passion and drive to live. And so ruby helps to give you that focus, and it infuses you with a little bit of self-confidence, and because it's known to be used by kings and royals. So I think that it would be a great stone to use, a very regal stone, but it also helps you just get a little bit more passionate about your goals and be a little more assertive towards them. And then the other one I would say is Carnelian. This is a crystal that can help you become more assertive in loving ways. It's considered a crystal that's associated with archangels. A lot of times Carnelian is something that has been used in some of the religious texts it's been described. So it's been a very powerful stone for many ages, and it can be a protective stone. And Carnelian encourages teamwork and cooperation to release the anger from you. It is usually an orange-red stone, and Carnelian is a great stone that helps you to focus that anger in a more positive way. So if you're somebody that feels a lot of rage in you and a lot of anger, and you're not quite cooperative like Tulkus, because Tulkus will never go against the other Valar, and he'll never speak against Manwë. He only does what he's supposed to in terms of kind of being a servant for Eru, through the wants of Manwë. And so Carnelian is about harnessing the power of cooperation and teamwork, but with a fiery passion as well, because it's that orange stone that's also connected to the sacral chakra, and it also sometimes can have a yellow type of sheen to it as well. It can come in like orange or yellow. So that is a really great stone that I think really symbolizes Tulkus. And then I would say this, that your visualization, those of you that really feel connected to a lion or a lioness, I think that this energy can help to harness the powers of Tulkus. Visualizing the lion, what I think many of us appreciate about the lion is that the lion symbolizes a steady flame, a cool fire of assertiveness, of aggressiveness, being able to go after its hunt or its prey aggressively, catching it with its claws and tearing it from limb to limb. But then the other part of the lion is that it's a big cat. So it can sit back and it looks regal on its rock, bathing on the sun. And, it closes its eyes. It has this look of content on its face, and its tail switches like a cat. So it's a cool fire, a steady flame, not an anxious fire, not an out of control one. The lion is a regal, majestic animal. And I said this, that the lion as an animal symbolizes the cool fire within its contained energy to run fast and hunt for its prey when hungry, but content to sit back and relax like a big cat. If you watch a lion, they can show you this power of control, of energy to be aggressive and then back off from your attack and go sit on a rock in the sun looking majestic. when your work is done. And that's Tulkus. Tulkus is a lot like a lion in this way, taking care of the other Valar with physical effort, but also having the relaxed side too, able to sit back and relax, laugh a little, play a little, jest and sport. And it's the non-anxious anger. It's focused, and it comes and goes as an energy. It's attack, pull back, attack, pull back, only when needed, only when the lion truly needs to eat, or when it feels threatened in the territory that it has marked. So it's non-anxious anger. Tulkus is steady and firm because he channels it rightfully towards Melkor and nobody else, and does not release it on anyone around except for Melkor. Focused anger that doesn't hurt others around him unattended. And lions are a lot like this. Big cats, many people will see that you can tame a lion, that it is a possibility. Because if a lion senses that you have no harm towards it, then you can grow a relationship with a lion. You see that with zookeepers, you see that with people who keep lions. I mean, the Tiger King and all that, the show that's on right now, even though I don't agree with keeping big cats in cages, I'm really against that. I would say that it is possible because a lion can sense your energy of non-threatening energy towards it. But if you are threatening, be careful, because then the lion will aggressively go after you. So it's focused anger that doesn't hurt others around him unattended that Tulkus has. He is a lot like a lion. He's the king of carnivores, only killing when necessary and needing to feed their own. The last tool is fire. The idea of your candles, your flame. You can do this as a steady flame meditation. What I have realized about fire contained on a candlestick is a really important tool, because it's a steady flame meditation that will soothe you as it aligns to the truth of your own anger, and you will start to process it as you stare at this steady flame, why you are so angry, how you can release that in a more positive way to get what you really want. Anger is a sign that your needs have not been met somehow. Something is unequal. There needs to be balance in your life. And so it's about staring at a flame and seeing that the flame goes nowhere. It stays. It's not destructive like a forest fire raging and destroying everything. It is a steady flame. And when you stare at that candle and that flame, that is the power of Tulkus, steady and firm, staying where it is, and allowing yourself to work and process through that anger. Why are you angry? What is it that you feel inside? Who hurt you? Who wronged you? And is your anger warranted? Is it something that you should be angry about? Is it full of wisdom? Or are you assuming and judging something instead of having full knowledge, and that's what's making you angry? A steady flame meditation is really great for releasing whatever it is that rages inside you, and you will get the answers that you seek. I said this, that steady flame meditation will soothe you as it aligns to truth of your anger, and you will start to process why you are so angry and how you can release that through your higher self. The voice of Eru will guide you of all that is. So I hope that these tools can help you. There may be more, and whatever you feel gets you in touch with Tulkus, then you can use. But that power is a great one to have. All the powers of the Valar are. And this is an example of confidence and anger, but mixed with laughter. And it's a delicate balance, but it's something that's within all our potential. Otherwise, Tolkien would not have written it into the story, and this is the message for us. So please join us with the ritual tonight in order to celebrate this and harness this energy and bring it more in. If you are interested in joining our rituals for the Elven spiritual path, the spiritual path from the perspectives of the elves of Tolkien, then you can join my channel. And this is all about getting you in touch with the power within yourself and helping you move forwards in the way that you need to on your next step in your life for your new transformation within. So Han and Lei for watching, and I will see you all on the next video, and hopefully I will see you in the ritual as well.